Hello and welcome to Maximum Disc, a show where I celebrate physical media and talk about some of the films that I own on Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray. I'm James Adamson, I'm a co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. If you like this chat about physical media, please do check out Double Reel. It's a magazine-style podcast made by people who love the movies as much as you do. We talk about various topics and films, and any episode we think you'll tune in and come away with some great film recommendations to watch. Sales pitch to one side, I want to talk about physical media today, because we think it matters. If you care about a film, you need to own it. You can't rely on the streamers to make it available. And if you want it to look and sound the way it should and be the right version, then you need to own it on disc. So for each episode, I'm going to talk about one film that I own. Obviously, the reason people want to hear about physical media copies of films is what it sounds like, what they look like. Is it a good quality reproduction of the original film? So we'll be talking about that, not in super technical detail, but I will go into that. Obviously, my thoughts on the film overall, and also my experience and background with the film, my history with it, watching it for the first time, why I wanted to own it, and that kind of thing. So today we're going to be talking about The Master, which I own on Blu-ray. The Master came out in 2012 and is written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, who people will obviously know him from Boogie Nights, which was kind of a defining film of the 1990s. And prior to The Master, he'd just come off the back of There Will Be Blood, which is still to date his biggest box office hit, nominated for all sorts of awards, and won Oscars for Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in the cinematography by Robert Elswit. This was his follow-up to that after 5 years, and on this film, I think PTA is coming in with a really sort of reputation riding high as one of his generation's leading filmmakers, although he was already quite well regarded beforehand. The cast of the film is predominantly revolves around three actors. Joaquin Phoenix plays Freddy, a disturbed World War II veteran who's drifting around in the 1950s looking for a purpose in life. Philip Seymour Hoffman plays Lancaster Dodd, leader of a pseudo-religious movement that Freddy joins. And Amy Adams plays Peggy Dodd, Lancaster's wife. You also get supporting roles from the likes of Laura Dern, Rami Malek and Jesse Plemons. The cinematography is by Mihaj Malajmer. I apologise if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. He's also worked with people like Francis Ford Coppola and Taika Waititi. I think it's safe to say this is his most renowned film in terms of photography and quality of picture. And it was PTA's first film without his usual DOP, Robert Elswit. The sound was provided by a large team, as always, but the overall supervisors of the sound and sound effects were David Acord and Matthew Wood. In terms of the sound, the music score is by Johnny Greenwood, which probably plays the most significant part in the story from a sound and sort of audio point of view, and we will be talking about Johnny's score over the course of this film. Now, in terms of awards and nominations, most of the awards attention for this film was for the actors. You got Oscar nominations for all three of those actors, Phoenix for actor in a leading role, Amy Adams and Philip Seymour Hoffman in the supporting categories. No wins at the big ceremonies, but quite a few at the smaller ones and the festivals, and lots of nominations across the board, everywhere from Venice to all of these other places where films like Paul Thomas Anderson's get the most appreciation, I think. In terms of its awards attention, it is kind of underrated, I think, especially compared to his other films. So in terms of the plot and background, part of it's kind of been hinted at by the three main actors, but what it revolves around is a disturbed war veteran, traumatized after his time in the US Navy. He tries out in various jobs and just ends up drifting. He starts out with a pretty good job as a photographer, and it gets worse and worse for him. He's clearly struggling with mental health and substance abuse issues. Eventually, he's on the run. People accuse him of poisoning somebody because they drank some of his homebrew and nearly died. And he happens upon a yacht containing Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, Lancaster Dodd, who is the leader of I guess the best word for it is a cult called The Cause. And he publishes books and he, brings members to him and tries to grow his movement. And it's kind of a 20th century religion. And River Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman's characters become very close over the course of the film. He becomes kind of a trusted lieutenant. It indicates that perhaps Lancaster Dodd, he likes a drink, he has a bit of a dark side that Phoenix appeals to, but also River Phoenix's Freddy character is really looking for a kind of father figure or a leader to help fix him, basically. And he grows in stature within the cause of the movement over time, and the movement develops and grows. They spend a lot of time at sea because it seems that there might be some legal trouble, and if Lancaster Dodd makes landfall, he might get into legal trouble. And they become disenchanted with each other. River Phoenix becomes disenchanted because he starts to get a hint that maybe they're making it up as they go along, that it's not real, and he's not feeling any better. But I think part of the reason he's not feeling any better is that there is a void inside River Phoenix's character that nothing can fill. And Freddie disappears, and after that there is kind of a search for some sort of resolution between them. It's partly inspired, I think, by Scientology. There were definite discussions at the time when it came out. There's also a novel, V, by Thomas Pynchon, who wrote about the lives of war veterans and the things that happened to them after the war, which seems to have been inspiration. And Thomas Pynchon has gone on to be a further inspiration to PTA. He adapted Pynchon's novel Inherent Vice, and his latest film, One Battle After Another, is, to one extent or another, we'll soon find out, inspired by or adapted from the works of Thomas Pynchon. So to the disc itself, it's a Blu-ray because there's no or very few films of PTA's are on 4K Blu-ray at all. So the standard Blu-ray disc is still your best way to see his films at home. I bought this in 2014 pretty much as soon as it was available, I think. It's the theatrical version of the film. I don't think any others exist. The special features are not extensive, but there are some reasonable ones on the disc. There are some outtakes and deleted scenes, some extra music by Johnny Greenwood, and a short behind-the-scenes film. I think the biggest extra feature is an hour-long documentary about World War II veterans from 1946, which was directed by the legendary John Huston and was a big inspiration for Paul Thomas Anderson alongside those other sources that we talked about. I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that I haven't watched it, even though it's right there on the disc that I own. I am, of course, only slightly embarrassed because I'm really here for the film, not the special features in the main. But for the people who like that kind of thing, there are a few things to get your teeth into on the disc, although it's not kind of a lavish collector's edition. So my background with the film is, I think, linked to my background with Paul Thomas Anderson. He absolutely had my attention when Boogie Nights came out. Like I said, it's seen as one of the defining films of the 1990s. I was a young man when that came out, and it had a big effect on me. I loved the way Paul Thomas Anderson put his own spin on that story and on that Goodfellas-esque, sort of Scorsese-esque, but also Robert Altman style ensemble film. I also love Magnolia. I think for a long time Magnolia was my favourite film of Paul Thomas Anderson's. There Will Be Blood was a really big success, especially with critics, and I had been to see that as well, so I was definitely looking out for his next film. I would probably say that the main draw for me was Philip Seymour Hoffman, though. He's a stunning actor who'd been just growing and growing in his sort of stature and reputation. And the combination of his performance and the subject matter, this lifting the lid on this strange phenomenon of like modern culty religion. I was queuing up to see this film on the opening weekend. Funnily enough, after all that talk of Philip Seymour Hoffman, as good as he is, I think River Phoenix ends up completely stealing the film and is the best thing in it, as is often the case with him. I was interested in the Scientology aspect. I'm not a big follower of the whole Scientology thing, but obviously it had been making headlines, and I wondered whether there would be a controversial film as a result of tackling this subject. They've been known to react or respond to any coverage of them or descriptions of them in film and in non-fiction as well. I was also curious, as a lot of people were, about how Tom Cruise would react, as I think it was generally known that, as well as being in a previous Paul Thomas Anderson film, he and PTA were friendly. What would Tom Cruise think of this, given he's such a prominent Scientologist? And in the years leading up to this film, that had been making headlines. So I made a point of seeing this film in the original 70mm print. It was showing at a London cinema in that format, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. And the film absolutely blew me away. 70mm films are rare. Seeing that on the big screen was really powerful. They were obviously trying to recreate the 50s with that big widescreen format, and I'm told from reading the Wikipedia, shallow depth of field, and as well as really showing off some of the amazing sort of landscape and sort of vivid scenes in the film on the salt flats and the ship at sea. It also puts the characters under the microscope. They're in real close-ups of them and really kind of have a close look at them, warts and all, as it were. So as well as some spectacular landscape scenes, you really get like a vivid picture of the people in the movie. I noticed from this one when I was watching it that, like most of PTA's films, it feels like his central characters set the tone for the movie and the story. For example, Boogie Nights seems to be in the style of the colourful, tumultuous life of Mark Wahlberg's Dirk Diggler character. There Will Be Blood is dark, driven and strange, like Plainview, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. And in a similar fashion, this film is off-kilter, dreamlike and disconnected to reflect the reality or the shaky grip on reality of Joaquin Phoenix's Freddy character. The film is sometimes more of an experience than a story, but I absolutely love that. The story arc is really fascinating. It starts with Freddy clearly being psychologically damaged, falling further away from normal life, and he kind of lands on the movement because he's got nowhere else to go. And he finds a kind of surrogate family there when he joins them, which I thought was similar to Boogie Nights, although it plays out very differently because it's not one big party, like Boogie Nights is, for better and worse. And in the end, Phoenix's disillusionment plays out really well. There's this growing sense of unease throughout the whole thing. And it was a no-brainer to own it when I was thinking about buying this on disc when it came out on Blu-ray, because it's my favourite Paul Thomas Anderson film now. For a long time it was Magnolia, and then it was The Master. And I'm probably in a bit of a minority for that. There's a lot of people who love Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood, but this is the one for me. Visually stunning in 70mm and just beautifully shot. It's always beautifully shot, a PTA film, but this really does sort of push the boat out. And Johnny Greenwood's score particularly got to me. Like I said, it's in Blu-ray because there isn't a 4K disc available. I would love to see a 4K disc of this just because the quality of the image is incredible. 70mm, again, I'm not an expert, but I've read up, for example, Lawrence of Arabia is this absolute high watermark for image quality, and that's in something like 8 or 12K apparently because of 70mm. So you would really need to go a long way in kind of a new format to reach the limits of what this film's got going for it visually. The video, like I say, is absolutely amazing. There's this image that stayed with me ever since I've watched it of the glittering sea reflected in the sunlight. It's just the opening shot of the film, and it's only there for a few seconds, but it really sort of burned its way into my brain. And that becomes kind of a recurring image of the film because quite a lot of time is spent at sea. In the beginning, Freddy's on a ship in the Navy, then they're on Dodds' boat all the time, and then he makes a journey across the Atlantic to go to England, and that shot of the sea keeps coming back. And overall, the image that PTA put on this film captures the vivid but disturbing world they're all living in. There's lots of long takes to let you drink in those visual images, and the transfer is really, really good. I guess in terms of highlights, there's the motorcycle scene on the desert flats. I love the close-ups and the kind of offbeat lighting and image that you have of people. It's very striking, and I remember seeing it in the cinema when you have this rather disturbed image of things where you're not sure if you're watching something that really happened or Freddy's dream or hallucination, and seeing that in such vivid colour, close up, 70mm, it's really stunning. The video on this is absolutely incredible. I mean, we'll be talking about 4K Blu-rays. The last one we did was Civil War. We'll be doing other ones. The video for this is amazing. The way in which the characters almost become like myths and legends, the way the camera captures them. It's that 1950s world where people just walk off the screen and look so vivid and alive, however flawed they are. The video of this is just incredible, just so good. I can't really say enough about it. Someone could give you the technical reasons why it's so good, but essentially it's a 70mm beautifully shot PTA film that really just brings his characters to life. It feels like they could step off the screen and talk to you at any moment. It's so lifelike and vivid. In terms of the sound, like I say, the sound is something that I think got no nominations, whereas almost everything else did. The writing, the cinematography, the score, direction and acting. The sound got no award nominations for this, which is, I guess, partly because there's no big action set pieces, Apocalypse Now style helicopter battles. You don't have a sinking ship with that kind of terrifying roar as the hull comes apart, or any of the things that would normally really drive a powerful soundscape into your speakers. But the sound is of the highest quality. 70mm captures the sound really beautifully. I think the main draw in terms of audio is Johnny Greenwood's score, which it beautifully reproduces. It's a mixture of music. You've got quite an orchestral score. You've got music that evokes the era. There's this kind of dreamlike underlying sound which makes you question how much of what you see is really real or going on in Freddie's mind. Like I said, that really accompanies the image really well. And there's often these striking discordant notes and sequences which really kind of send shivers down your spine in watching it. So it's the usual Johnny Greenwood atmospherics, which are really beautifully represented here. I think it's a 5.1 Dolby, but it's whatever it is, it's really bloody good. Not, I would say, if you wanted to say, let me show you how my sound system sounds, and you push the button on a Blu-ray, you want Apocalypse Now probably, but this is still really beautiful sound. But I think it's the video that's the main attraction here, the 70mm film on Blu-ray. So overall, like I say, this is something of an underrated film. I think a lot of people probably want PTA to do more of that 90s indie Scorsese thing that he did with Boogie Nights, or something with that dominant central character and the memeable sort of speeches and quotes like Daniel Plainview and There Will Be Blood. And he obviously went in a different direction in the 2010s than that. He did, Inherent Vice after The Master. He did go back to Daniel Day-Lewis with Phantom Thread, but with a very different kind of character. This film might not work for everybody, even PTA fans, but I think it really captures something really profound about damaged people searching for meaning in their lives. I think PTA tried to downplay the whole Scientology thing. He's not trying to lift the lid on a cult here. He's really trying to examine why people would feel that there was something missing that would make them go looking for something like Dodd's Cause or Hubbard's Scientology or whatever they end up with. And while I'm not particularly fascinated by Scientology or the 1950s, I just responded really strongly to this film. It dragged me into the world of Freddie and his struggles, and really took me into his world. The performance and direction conjure up this strange world, which just makes me want to go and dip in every time. Like I say, it's sometimes the experience more than the story that makes me come back and watch this film, because it's so rooted in the point of view of its main character. It feels like you've been dropped into one of Freddie's nightmares, which really worked for me, all 2.5 hours of it. Is this an essential purchase? Yeah, I'd say it is. There are very few films come out in 70mm, and Paul Thomas Anderson is a really powerful visual stylist. I mean, there are discussions of, I think he's quite hard on his director of photography. When he falls out with his director of photography, he shoots it himself. He really has placed a huge kind of emphasis on the visuals here. This is really great visual storytelling in a format that not many films come out in. I mean, it's always been rare. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia was in 1965, wasn't? Not many films are shot in that format, so grab it with both hands when you do. Johnny Greenwood's score is incredible. So are the performances. Joaquin Phoenix is probably close to the best work he's ever done in his career here. And I think that, the reason you'd want to own this film, like I say, is I think you put it on, you start watching it, and it feels different every time, or you get something different from it every time. And there are films, even some of my favourite films, where I'm like, I've seen this film a few times, I remember this bit. But this time, I get that kind of jolt every time I watch this film. It really does repay, repeated viewings. So I would put this down as one to watch and buy, in fact. And the Blu-ray, I think, is relatively available. It's not one of these ones that's gone out of print. And with PTA, I think it's going to be a while before we see any 4K with him. So, I don't think you're likely to risk that, buying it in Blu-ray and then the next day hearing that a 4K's been issued and you've wasted your money. I think this is a genuinely good investment for people who love physical media and love this kind of quite unique filmmaking. So that's The Master. I hope I've convinced you to buy it. I hope I've given you an engaging chat about the ins and outs of this film. Once again, if you enjoy the show, please do check out the Double Reel podcast, and ways to find that podcast on our socials will be on the screen in a moment. Hope you've enjoyed this chat about physical media, and we'll see you next time for more of it right here on Maximum Disc. The Maximum Disc YouTube channel is brought to you by Double Reel, the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. If you like our celebration of physical media, please check out the podcast for more chat about the films we love and hate.